Hey y'all, Data Guy here, back with yet another Live with Astronomer on 2.7 features. And today I'm just going to be running through all of the latest and greatest features in Airflow 2.7 that you should care about. And so the first one is, I guess, less of a feature and more just people are finally taking advantage of the new Notifier class, and one of the first people to do that is AppRise. So AppRise has actually developed their own Notifier class that you can just import from, like you would import any other provider class, and then you just feed it your AppRise connection ID. You can give it a dynamic body to actually, give you information about what happened if there was a failure in the notification, and define the notify type as well. So, anytime it fails, trigger this notification. And the reason why this is cool is because, the notifier classes came out in Airflow 2.6, and, you had the Slack notifier, you had a generic email notifier, but there weren't, because it's a new feature and you need to kind of develop these providers, build your own, notification method that you can then import. There weren't a ton out of the box, but now you have other companies like AppRise actually building their, best-in-class versions of their notification methods. So cool trend that I hope continues as we see more, notification services start to provide their own methods, so we don't have to keep building Python scripts to actually generate them and use them. So that's one really cool feature. The next one that I'm super excited about is setup and teardown tasks. And so basically what setup and teardown tasks are a way for you to, say, hey, no matter what happens at the end of this segment of my code, so between setup and teardown, that teardown task is always going to run. So the reason why this is important is a lot of times, whether it's data quality checks, whether it's ML, you're using resources that are only being used for the context of that pipeline. And so for data quality checks, maybe you're using a temp table. For machine learning, maybe you're spinning up a cluster to train a model. Those cost money. Compute resources cost money, as we all are painfully aware of. And so what setup and teardown tasks do is basically allow you to say, hey, no matter what happens in this pipeline, I want that table to be deleted after the end of it, because I want to save money on the resources that the table is consuming. So basic use case here is, within Snowflake, I'm setting a setup task that is creating a temp table for me to run some data quality checks in, inserting some data into that table, running those data quality checks, and then I am deleting that table. And so no matter if those data quality checks fail, I still want to delete that table. I don't want to just have endless amounts of temp tables being built and consumed. So what I'll do is, or what teardown tasks do is say, hey, even if these data quality checks fail, that table will still be deleted, and you can see kind of the relationship here between setup and teardown represented by this dotted line. So you can expand this to say, hey, maybe my model training failed, maybe some step of this really long running overnight process failed, but I still want to kill the resources it's consuming so they're not just sitting there idle all night. So teardown tasks are a really beautiful solution to that, where now you don't have to create frameworks that cobble together, hey, even if some of these tasks fail, I still want this to run, but only based on this teardown tasks. Really just simplify the whole process. And you can either append them to existing operators like I am doing here. So within this implementation, the way I've implemented it is delete table as teardown, or .as teardown method, and then setting what your setup task is. You can actually have multiple setup tasks that all correspond to one teardown task. And so that's how you extend existing operators to do it. You can also just use the setup teardown decorators. So if you're using like Python functions as your setup and teardown tasks, here you can see I have this at setup task, which is just creating a CSV using Python, and then I have my at teardown task, which is just deleting that same CSV. So similar implementation, just slightly different based on what kind of operators you are using. Another thing that I would like to note too is they have, for security reasons, actually disabled the ability to test connections within the Airflow UI. So you can re-enable this. You can, it is a feature flag that is just Airflow core test connection. So if you are okay with the security risks, then you can re-enable it. But if you're not, then it is just disabled by default, and you can even hide the button by setting the flag to hidden. Now, the next feature which is also pretty cool, is the update to the chain function. So previously, I don't know if you or if any of you have worked with the chain function, you might have noticed that a major limitation was that you couldn't have lists within the chain function that were of different lengths. And that is because if you did that, and the way the chain function worked before is it would say, hey, whatever task is at location 1 in the first list, match it to or link it to the task at location 1 in the second list. And if if the location didn't exist in either or in one of the lists and not the other, so if this one was 3 and this one was 2, then the chain function just wouldn't work. It wouldn't be able to create that mapping. So now with the chain linear function, which is basically all you should use now instead of chain, you have basically what you'll do is create a linkage between every item in the first list to every item within the second list. So instead of it just being, hey, position 1 to position 1, now it's position 1 to all the items in the first list. So whether tasks or task groups have to complete successfully before any of the tasks or task groups in the second list can actually be triggered. And so just great for, blowing off a pretty silly limitation of chain function. And what this looks like implemented in the code, it's very much the same as the chain function, but now you're just using chain linear. So not really a huge change, but a lot of additional capabilities unlocked here. And one also thing to note about setup and teardown tasks is that these can be nested. So if you want to have an outer setup teardown task for your macro resource management, but you also have smaller setup teardown tasks, maybe you're testing individual tables, whatever, you can nest them an unlimited amount of times. So you aren't restricted to just, hey, I can only have one setup teardown task with my DAG. You can have as many as you want, and they can be different segments, they can be nested, however you want to configure it. And that's actually something that we'll discuss how that was possibly implemented on next week's Live with Astronomer, where we'll have one of the contributors to the setup teardown task come on to explain it. Now, another feature that was brought in is, and this, I guess, less of a feature, more of just a new configuration option, is the config option to have all of your deferrable operators equal, or all of your operators by default, or that can be deferrable, automatically set to deferrable. So, if you're using deferrable operators, you're always going to want to use them for as much as you can. Helps you save resources, helps offload some of that work from the scheduler or the worker nodes and just put it on the trigger. And so this deferrable flag, basically now you can say, hey, at my DAG level, at my default level, or at my airflow environment level, I can say all of my deferrable operators have that flag automatically turned on to true so that they will be set to deferrable. So, just a good improvement to have, so you don't have to constantly just rewrite the same code. Really in keeping with a lot of the improvements to Airflow recently, just avoiding some of that boilerplate code that you're always having to work on. Another feature here is if we go into this toy linear task group, you now have keyboard macros. So if you press Shift/, you'll get this cheat sheet and make sure you're in a specific DAG to actually expose this, where now I could clear an entire DAG run just by typing in Shift-C. So if I select this DAG run, Shift-C, it'll clear it. I can also mark individual tasks as successful or failed, and you can choose whether you want to propagate downstream as well. But just nice quality of life improvement for not having to constantly click in those little menus, select, hey, the marked as failed, go back out. Now I can just quickly mark it as failed, boom, and get back to testing. Now, the final feature I want to show you is the new cluster activity screen. So finally, we get some visibility at a macro level into what's happening within our Airflow environment. So you can see, what pool slots are being consumed, what DAGs are taking the longest to finish, the health of all of your different resources underpinning your Airflow environment. You can also look at, task execution states, how many are failing, go through all the different states there. You can filter for whatever date range you would like, and just, I hope this page gets a lot more work on it, but it also is pretty good out of the box where now you finally have a view of what is going on underneath the scenes of your Airflow environment. And so that is what I wanted to end on. So I hope you get your hands on Airflow 2.7 real soon, start making use of some of these latest and greatest features, and also tune in next week to check out the Setup Teardown Tasks deep dive, where we'll talk about, hey, why is it using the trigger instead of the scheduler, and some of the possibilities that unlocked with one of the actual developers from that piece of Airflow. So make sure you tune in, and I'll see you next week on